Welcome back to another episode of The Banker, the Broker, and the Canadian. And once there was three and now only two, not forever, but just for this episode. So we've got the banker present, we've got the broker present, but the Canadian was preoccupied and had some plans that didn't align with this schedule. So Reedy is not with us today, but I'm sure he will watch it back and get the gist of it anyway. But myself and Jim plan to share some thoughts around anxiety, some thoughts around gratitude, and also unpacking these two topics across what I would probably refer to as across the socioeconomic stretch, right? The socioeconomic status, that the anxiety is not removed from those that might have means, right? It might even be even more prevalent among those that are a little bit more well-to-do. So Jim, share with me some of those thoughts that you did a second ago and talk to us a little bit about anxiety.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks everybody for listening, and happy Wednesday. I'll start out with a story. Recently, I was on one of my first road trips, solo road trips after my big spine surgery last October. So this is quite an adventure for me of reaching out and going on my own and figuring out that I can navigate this on this trip. And during the trip, I met a handful of people that really are successful in life. And even in my opinion, I'm like, they're big wows. They contribute, they have their act together, they do goals and affirmations in the morning. And as I was talking to them, they started opening up and sharing with me about a couple of things. They have anxiety and they have a lot of self-doubt. And I was just blown away that they first would open up and share that with me, but also that they even had it. And that kind of started this topic of, I really maybe shouldn't have been surprised, but I was, because I just thought, wow, they really have their act together, and then they have all this struggle and anxiety and self-doubt. And then I kept thinking about it. I said, usually a lot of these people that were talking to me, they actually are out really doing a lot of things. And so they get a lot of criticism, and then they have some challenges that we were working with them on, just overcoming their anxiety. How do they do that, and overcoming their self-doubt? And so I think today in this episode, we'll throw it back to Jason and maybe ask a question of him and get some answers on how, we can share how in talking to individuals as well as ourselves, how we overcome our self-doubt and our anxiety.
Great, Jim. Well, thank you for sharing that story. And this is a topic that is very much near and dear to me, because until recently, I would not have told you that I was really even understanding what anxiety was, nor would I be able to tell you that I had it. But the truth is that I've had pretty severe anxiety my entire life. And so, quick rundown of how I guess my upbringing relates to anxiety and how I feel like it might have been brought to life for me is that I grew up in an environment where there was this constant, what I would call running from challenges or running from difficulty, in a way that, problems were just allowed to linger, if you will, right? Problems were allowed to linger. And so as a result, I developed a pattern or a habit of ignoring things that otherwise needed to be dealt with, right? And so I had a tremendous amount of energy, and I had, just kind of by good fortune, or if you want to call it good fortune, by just fortune of that, I was outgoing, right? So I had this desire to engage and interact with other people, but there was also this inherent insecurity that, that I wouldn't meet the right standard, or that I wouldn't say the right thing, or that maybe something about how I was largely inadequate in a lot of areas of things, right? And not having financial abundance, the insecurity that I carried into those relationships as a result of that, right? And so I was regularly interacting with people that seemingly had things together in a better way than I did, and so that caused me to live with and exist with anxiety. Well, fortunate for me, I was a decent athlete, and so as a young, you're engaged in sports, right? And so one outlet was, I let the carryover, or I let the success that I might have had on the sports field carry over into other relationships, and that helped in a sense to kind of dampen or help mute that anxiety that I felt about being inadequate. And so I realizing that I've wrestled with anxiety kind of my whole life. And of course, I'll share with you other thoughts around how I've mitigated that and things that I've done. But I would kick it, just maybe ask of you, have have you yourself struggled with, or can you relate to anxiety yourself personally?
100%. And it doesn't go away easily. It comes back every morning, and every morning you got to like push it down in the trash can again and start with some positive affirmations. I'm sure you do that too in the morning. Of uh, basically think of three things that you're grateful for, and you push that anxiety down into the trash can uh, before you even launch a lot or experience a lot of today. And so, if you take that daily habit of just being what I call grateful three, in my team, in my family, we even asked the dog to be grateful for three things. And then when I asked the dog, then like the other family members are like, well, yeah, I need to do three grateful things too. Sorry, sorry, sorry. And, but it does launch the day of a positive mental attitude of throwing the anxiety that may be appearing that day or that you're feeling from that night, and the waking up and thinking, my goodness, I have to go to work and this person's going to do this, and my checking account is below zero, and I don't know how I'm going to do this, and this is going on, and she said that to me this morning, and I thought I could get three hugs out of my kid and I got none, all that, needs to go down. And so the grateful three things are one way of doing that. And also working on yourself every day. I know that Jason and Reedy are our role models of our group, and I guarantee you, what you see and the success, that the you you see with them in public is because in private you don't see the whole picture of the iceberg. You just see the top of the iceberg, but underneath that is all this huge foundation of work of you know of really pulling down the anxiety and the self doubt and pulling up the goodness and the positivity and those things. Because I guess what I'm trying to say in a very long winded way is that daily you must put your anxiety and your self doubt in a trash can. Be grateful for three things at least. Write them down if you can, and then realize that all of us in our public lives show you just see some of it, but there's a huge foundation underneath there that we don't see in our private lives of the work and the things that we do privately in order to show that publicly that we can squelch these uh, feelings of anxiety and self-doubt.
That's great, Jim. Thank you for sharing. I think it's important that we maybe define anxiety, right? And so I just looked it up just so we kind of have an idea of what it is, and feelings of fear, dread, and uneasiness that may occur as a reaction to stress. Okay. A person with anxiety may sweat, feel restless and tense, and have a rapid heartbeat. Extreme anxiety that happens over time may be a sign of an anxiety disorder. Okay.
Mhm.
Um, in my personal experience, I would say that a good bit of that anxiety stems from having enough focus and attention to prepare properly for the either event or the conversation or the thing that I was about to be engaged in. And so, for instance, I've largely, and this may come as a surprise, but I've largely had a lot of fear around speaking in public or speaking openly and even among a relatively smaller group. And as I spend more time thinking about it, it largely comes from being unable to focus long enough to prepare adequately for it, right? So even something as simple as doing an outline, for me, if another person's not involved, it's a real challenge for me to sit down with a piece of paper and even write down just one speech or one presentation, for instance. In
Mhm.
fact, there's something I do need to share with you, Jim, that I don't think I told you, but I'm thinking it was Monday. So I actually spoke to a university in Kosovo, and so I was connected with the dean of a university over there through a friend of mine who was doing some work with the students, and he made me aware of, I think they call it the International Finance Fest or the Global Finance Fest or something to that effect. And knowing my role and knowing the passion that I have around helping people to grow and develop, my buddy connected me with them. And we had a pre-call, and the gentleman that I spoke to over there, who had great English, and I feel like he understood what I said, and I understood what he said for sure. We arrived at what we felt like would be a good topic. And so the offerings were to go down the path of finance, economics, and markets or something like that, or it was to go down the path of entrepreneurship and innovation. And for me, as I think about what would be most relevant, what I would be speak to most authentically and most confidently, it doesn't actually involve any bit of my profession. It doesn't involve the finance, right? And so I wound up
Mhm.
choosing the entrepreneurial route. Okay. And so I'm going to share a few different thoughts around how this happened. They're 7 hours ahead of us. Okay. And so I actually used my support team, a person that's working for me, to schedule the meeting. And she scheduled it. And then the response was, yeah, it'll be 1700, right? The time will be 1700. And they didn't refer to whether it was Central Standard Time, which would be my time, or whether it would be their time. Are you still with me, Jim?
Yeah, you cut out for just a second, but we're still here.
Okay. So they didn't clarify the time zone, right? And
Huh?
so the morning of the presentation, I was thinking that it was 5 p.m. My time is when I was speaking,
Uh-huh.
1700, right? No, no, no. It was 1700 their time. And so when I realized this, I had about 17 minutes before the meeting, before the presentation. And in true form, I was planning on preparing for it that afternoon. And so the only real material that I had to go from was an outline that my beautiful wife was able to help me put together, because she, very different than me, is overly prepared for just about everything. And
Uh-huh.
so she helped me put together this outline, and I think it actually came out really great. And I'm going to give you a little brief synopsis of what I spoke to them about, and it does actually kind of fit with this idea of anxiety and self doubt. And so the three main points that I made, and she helped me with this to organize it, was that anyone within the first point is that anyone within the organization can be a leader. Okay. So, from an entrepreneurial mindset, regardless of whether you're the janitor or an analyst or you're the CEO of the company, you have personal control over whether you exhibit leadership qualities as a part of every single interaction that you have. And so that for me was a bit of an entrepreneurial or an entrepreneurship type of mindset that you can apply in any organization, because you recognize that your brand is what you're communicating in every interaction, right? So that's how I fit that in. The second point was never ending growth and innovation. Okay. So the idea that we don't maintain a fixed mindset, right? Don't accept the status quo. Don't accept how things are currently done. And one of the points that I made to them that was actually surprising, and one of the professors spoke up and kind of pushed back on it a little bit, because he said he basically shared an anecdote that he got fired for what I just encouraged them to do, which is don't accept the current way of doing things for law. Meaning that your involvement, if you approach it with the right perspective, if you approach it with an entrepreneurial mindset about being willing to break the mold and be willing to enhance or improve the situation, the organization's not going to fault you for trying to improve their process, right? They're not going to fault you for attempting to do things better than they currently are. Or in this gentleman's case, if they fire you for trying to improve their situation, then that gives you the idea that you aren't a good fit for that organization, because they don't foster creativity. They don't typically just want a bunch of doers that are going to take instruction and fall in line, right? And so again, we went kind of back and forth a little bit and kind of went through that a little bit, which was fun. And then the last thing that I shared was the idea of the biggest possible vision for oneself at this moment, recognizing that can and will change as you gather new information and develop new steps of awareness and new skill sets and new experience. And so we have a responsibility to continuously develop a bigger vision for ourselves as we have new experiences, because we're now perched from a new perspective, right? We're now perched from a new vantage point. And so seeing ourselves bigger than that. And so I felt like all of that fit into taking that entrepreneurial mindset of being willing to break things, constantly wanting to grow, and being a little bit independent in how you do that. And so the way that I feel like that fits into anxiety and self-doubt is that in order for you to operate from that place, in order for you to be bold enough to do that, there's a considerable amount of self-work that has to happen, right? You have to fully accept yourself, right? Fully accept that every single experience that you've had to this point was part of your meaning, that you shouldn't harbor any bitterness or frustration or anger towards anyone who you currently think of as wronging you or hurting you or, doing injustice to you at a previous point. The most mature way for us to interact with some of those painful moments of the past is to recognize that it was a character building experience, right? It was a character building opportunity for us to grow and for us to develop more confidence and more self-esteem, so that way we might more boldly present ourselves moving forward. And if we do that self-work, then a lot of that anxiety that you have is going to fall away, because you're going to begin to live in a way that's more authentic. And that's what I realized too. Part of the reason why I had so much anxiety is because I was projecting this image of something that I wasn't, in the sense that I was telling a story and or explaining something that I wasn't entirely familiar with. And so there was a bit of a disconnection, right? There was a disconnect between what I was saying and how I was really feeling and what I had. But when I got those things aligned, right? When I found alignment between overcoming some of those personal experiences, and then that alignment showed through in the way that I communicate, and that alignment showed through in the things that I presented, then they flowed a lot more smoothly. I felt more comfortable. I didn't have the anxiety. I stopped sweating. Well, no, I kind of still sweat, but the confidence showed up. And what I think most people will realize is that you only have to exhibit that confidence in very short spurts, in very short sprints, because once you have the confidence to act, then what takes over is your innate desire to kind of grow and to develop and to move further. And then the next domino falls that much easier. And so when I think about where our attention should be given, I feel like our attention should be given to those catalytic moments. Right? What can serve as the catalyst for action? And can I serve as the catalyst for action for others? I never want to present myself as the person that tells you this is how you have to do it, or this is what you should do, or approach it from a place of preaching or from a place of teaching. But I do want to approach the conversation of growth and the conversation of development from invitation to self-discover, right? An invitation to self-explore your own anxiety and maybe figure out what is it that might be the cause of that anxiety? What is it that might be the cause of that self-doubt? And then go to work repairing it, right? And so when I think about what that repair looks like, it involves daily and consistent habits. As you know, Jim, we've talked about it extensively. What negative or self-defeating habits can we rid ourselves of and replace those things with positive, uplifting, encouraging habits, and then install those as our new pattern of behavior? And when we set those things on autopilot, the fruits that come from that are just going to take care of themselves.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate you sharing, because we think someone like you doesn't have anxiety, and that, uh, then you share and you be open with us and be vulnerable, and then you realize that your wife came to the table to really throw you a 911 lifeline and give you an outline. But also, I think that your wife gives us a great example of, okay, Jason, I can throw you a lifeline this time, right? And, you know, show you, but then also the message to you and me, and probably to our audience as well, is where you're giving that vulnerable example, Jason, was that in the future, to maybe lower your anxiety and, help your confidence when you go into these, is to prepare. And I think that probably only prepare, we learn those preparedness lessons. And, in the Boy Scouts and the Girl Scouts, they talk about the number one thing to do is be prepared. Be prepared in your camping trip by thinking ahead of time about what you're going to need in order to go camping. And so I think the successful people like your wife in life maybe over prepare, so that when they get in speaking engagements, that they have a lot of things that they can pull out of their tool chest. And they have the tools in there, they can open up the tool chest, and then they can pull out this example or this one, but they still have other tools in there that they can use at their discretion. So I think that's a great example of when we do have anxiety and we do come up to the last minute and there's some changes, and we're supposed to be, especially speaking and publicly for large or small audiences, that it's a great idea to be prepared and do things a little bit more in advance. So
For sure. And I do the best I can to learn from her, because yeah, she's overly prepared and she's a great speaker as a result, because she's able to so confidently deliver the things that she knows so well, because it's routine for her in a lot of ways, right?
mm-hmm.
And so
Right.
but it's not without work, right? It's not without effort and energy and practice and intention that she is able to get up and do that. And so there are some things that are circulating out there in the Arena Collective. They recently posted a real estate seminar she did for a Keller Williams office, and to where she helps real estate agents operate as business owners, as opposed to just thinking of themselves as salespeople or thinking of themselves as producers, but helping them to really define purpose and mission and values and establish operating procedures for their business, and helping them to operate like an enterprise.
Absolutely. And her voice, and coming from being an attorney and having her own company, is something that those, as being in real estate, especially the residential Keller Williams agents, they need to hear that loud and clearly. And, so, but, you know, I'm sure that they're always with everybody, no matter what their socioeconomic status is and how much money they have in their checking account and whatever their network is, that let's never assume that they don't have anxiety, that they don't have anxiety attacks, that they don't have struggles of self doubt. But there are vehicles, and one of them, Lauren showed us very clearly today in our talk, is to be prepared, and maybe you be over prepared so that you have that
Sure.
confidence and you can go forward with less or not as much anxiety in your life, in how you're living your life. So,
Sure. I love that point you just made, Jim. And just to expand on that, most have probably heard the phrase, if you haven't, here it is. But everyone that you interact with is dealing with a struggle that you will never know about, right? That you will never, they'll never share it with you, and they won't share it with others. They have a certain battle or a certain struggle that they have. And so the idea of being more compassionate and more empathetic to others just by nature is kind of the message for me there. Recognizing that everyone, and this is a controversial take on something, but this is a hot take that I believe in entirely, which is everyone that you come across is doing the best that they can. Okay. Meaning that they're not intentionally performing at a lower level than they could perform. They're not intentionally trying to get over on you because they think that there's a better way to do it and they're just choosing not to do it. No, they're limited. And what they're limited by is their conditioning. They're limited by, frankly, and we all, by certain delusion. Okay. And I would use that word intentionally because I mean that word. And some people might take offense to that, but we're all delusional to a certain extent, meaning that we have certain beliefs that aren't accurate. Okay.
right.
And these inaccurate beliefs, these inaccurate ideas that we operate from don't serve us well. And as a result, they don't serve the situation well when we're engaged with others or when we're involved in a project or where we're involved in a relationship. If you operate from a faulty software, then it's not going to produce the outcome that you're looking for. A lot of people, man, why is divorce rate so high? Well, why do people lie to each other constantly? If people aren't truthful and honest and upfront with one another, then are we really wondering why the relationship failed? You were dishonest. You didn't operate with your cards face up. And so when you're always trying to kind of hold the ace in the hole and you're always trying to kind of protect yourself against the other person hurting you, then you're not really behaving in a way that's in alignment with wanting the relationship to succeed. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And now don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that you're just electing and just saying, yeah, I'm just going to choose to kind of be this, hellacious, person that does all these wrong or bad things by choice. No, I get it. It's part of your programming. It's part of your upbringing. It's part of your conditioning. It's part of that. And that's where a lot of your insecurity and the anxiety stems from. It's our responsibility to begin exploring that so that way we can overcome it. Right? It's our responsibility to observe the inconsistencies between beliefs, our ideas, and our attachments, and the fact, right? The fact that those ideas, beliefs, and attachments don't produce the outcome that we're looking for. And the reason why I say it that way is because most people that are hearing this, I can put myself in this camp as well. I'm not experiencing the life exactly the way that I would like to, right? Now, don't get me wrong. Have I come a long way? Absolutely. Is my current life experience very different than it once was? Absolutely. Am I grateful? Am I profoundly grateful for my current life experience and the perspective that I have? Absolutely. Hasn't always been this way. But do I also recognize how much room for further growth there is because as good as it feels in here, I've only just started sharing that and attempting to share it accurately with others. And as a result, I'm confident. I live with the confidence. I live with the understanding and the certainty that the ideal life that I'm, if you want to call it, looking for is going to present itself before me over time as patience and persistence happens.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great shares this morning, Jason. As we wrap up, I have one additional share. There's a book that was given to me on my birthday, and what an amazing person that gave me this book, but also an amazing gift. It's quite small. You can put it in your hand. Get it on Amazon. It's called Gratitude One Line a Day. It has a bookmark in it, but every day for 3 years on one page. So you start with, let's say, May 4th and then 2024. And then as you go through, you come back to this page in 25. And then the next year, the third year. So it's an amazing, like, little gem of taking your grateful threes and writing it down, which I'm a big, huge broadcaster of. It's okay to be grateful for three things, but then please write them down and then do me another personal favor. Just share it with one person today.
Yeah.
That I'm so grateful for this. I'm so grateful for this. And I'm also so grateful for this. And it could be, I'm so grateful for you. Make sure that you have that gratefulness, and that will keep the anxiety at bay. It will actually produce not only in you character qualities that are the opposite of self doubt, and also it will affect those people that you meet every day, where you're living consciously and producing whole persona of less anxiety in your life and more benefits of when fear disappears, then abundance appears in its place. So with that, Jason, do you have any recap comments and things as we wrap up today?
Yeah, first, thank you again for that share. That was beautifully said. The last thing that I would leave with is anxiety and gratitude are in opposition to one another, and they cannot coexist, right? And so the further you cultivate your gratitude and appreciation for things, the weaker that your anxiety and your anxiousness and your frustration and all those other difficult emotions will become. So cultivate gratitude and allow some of those lesser emotions fall off. Till we see you next time, subscribe to the channel. Go check us out on social. We'd love to hear from you. You can submit any suggestions or ideas to info@anchorhabit.com. And we'd love to hear from you. Talk soon. Peace.
Okay, peace.